Yo, what's up, guys? Just wanted to make a quick video, going over my plans for season 13 Afterlight, and also talk a little bit about the changes from the patch notes, and go over how it affects my build from the previous season. If you followed me for that build, it was the Cicada ES stacking Berserking Blade setup. So, first thing I want to talk about is the changes to Rayhan 2. So basically what is happening is that our backpack, the Seething Spirit, is going to have a 30% additional attack speed nerf, and then our personal damage is going to go up by an additional 30%. So I believe at level 1, the damage goes from 20 to 50%. Um, I believe this change is not really going to be an issue for us. I think it is a bigger issue for the lifestack consume version. Um, but I think for our setup, it is sort of neutral. It makes our mapping quality of life a little worse because we do rely on the backpack for the majority of our damage since we're basically just like moving around quickly between packs. But like for early game and like the first like initial few days, I don't think this should be an issue since we're mainly doing manual attacks. Um, so this change is it's okay in my opinion. The biggest change though is the Eternity as well as Cicada adjustments. So let me go to Eternity. So huge adjustments to Eternity. They're capping the stacks at 120 to 200 depending on your role. And also the buffs are getting huge nerfs. So the one that our build relied on abusing basically with ES stack, the Eternal Guard change, it went from I believe 5% defense. Let me double check. Yeah, so it went from 5% defense for a stack, all the way down to 0.4%. So I think the math was like 16 stacks of the old buff is the equivalent of fully capping 200 stacks of the new one. So it's definitely a huge hit to our scaling. Um, so whether or not our build can even rush Eternity is kind of up in the air. Um, I think it'll heavily rely on the new prices because they are nerfing Eternity, but I believe they're also restricting the drop rate so that it only drops in profound or above. So it should drop in price because it got nerfed, but also the supply will go down because of the restrictions and where it can drop. So we'll have to see whether or not it's a viable item to still be rushing. I mean, it's still very strong because you get the uh 10% additional damage multiplicative times 10, as well as the other buffs are still pretty decent. Like you get up to 200% skill area if you max the stacks. It's still very strong for Berserking Blade. Other thing I wanted to talk about, Cicada Shell. So they're making Cicada Shell a exclusive drop from Afterlight gameplay. Uh, It says at deep and above. I believe this is a translation error. It's actually profound and above because if you go to the TLIDB page, it says exclusive drop from the visual gameplay, which is Afterlight, and it says at profound or higher. So if we go by TLIDB, which is usually more accurate than the patch notes, since I believe these patch notes are basically just like AI translated at this point. I think because it's the current season mech, so everyone will be running it, and it dropping from profound and above, it's a lot more achievable compared to if it was actually at deep space and above. So whether or not I transition to the Cicada ES stacking version of my build, it's kind of up in the air. It's very reliant on the prices of Cicada Shell and whether or not it makes sense. Um, but I will be keeping an eye on the prices of Cicada Shell as well as Eternity and making any future adjustments to my build from there. What else was there to go over? I believe the so there was an adjustment to Spectral Slash, which is the setup I'm planning to go into Profound with, but it does not affect our setup that much. So when this skill is triggered, it now deals minus 12% additional damage. But because we are playing Rayhan 2 instead of like Erica 3, for example, we are not triggering this ability, and our backpack is considered a use or like a cast, like a use of this spell. So we're not triggering it, we're just basically manually casting it. So this doesn't affect our setup. So if you go over to my YouTube page, my last video was like a Rayhan 2 proof of concept for my league start. It was basically Ground Shaker campaign into Spectral Slash for Traveler 7. Um, Basically nothing really changed with our league start, and so you can basically use this as a reference video if you want to figure out like a league start strategy. It's not as optimized as other like campaign or Trav 7 kills, but it's a pretty good rough proof of concept. You can follow it and have like a great league start. I basically will be doing the same exact setup from this video, except I might go one-hander instead of two-hander. The only reason why I went two-hander in this campaign setup was just to test out how it is compared to one-hand. Um, the only downside with two-hander is that you have to use ground shake or not ground shake, leap slam instead of spiral strike for mobility. I think spiral strike is a lot more smoother, and it's my preferred movement ability. So, yep, I will basically be league starting like the same exact setup. Oh, and speaking of mobility, so Thunder Spike, our great OP ass mobility skill, got adjusted to be more in line with other mobility skills. Kind of sad about this one. It does mean we're not going to be super zooming across the map with just Thunder Spike. We'll have to see like how bad the nerf was and whether or not like this support skill is still worth using. Um, but if it's not worth using, then we'll just go back to Spiral Strike, which is unfortunately a lot worse in terms of movement. But if we do pair it again with Blade Dancers, um, I don't think it'll be that bad. But we'll have to see like how it feels. And let's let's see what else I wanted to talk about. Oh, I did want to talk about my plans for after Profound. So the the plan was Ground Shaker campaign, and as soon as finishing campaign, respec into Spectral Slash. And the plan is Spectral Slash will carry us all the way into farming like Profound and getting us a bunch of money. Um, and then for above Profound, like Deep Space, Red Deep Space, we'll have to see the prices of how Eternity and Cicada Shell is. But with the new introduction of the Afterlight mechanic and the gear from there are a few standout things that I'm very interested in testing out. So let me see. Here it is. So the added progression, this is the Afterlight season mechanic specific like power creep stuff. This specific line I'm very interested in abusing. Previously, this said when using a core Steve Strike skill instead of when casting. The biggest difference here is casting includes triggering skills. So this basically reads as when using or casting a core Steep Strike skill, for every 1% chance above 100%, you have a 1% chance to trigger your basically your main Steep Strike skill. So like the skill in slot 1. And when it's triggered, it gains an additional 70% damage and skill area. So this is a very interesting line that I want to definitely include in my endgame setup, depending on how expensive it is. But basically, the fact this includes triggers, it gives us an angle to abuse the Kitty Express pet if you do have it. The biggest downside of our build, if unfortunately it doesn't really apply to free-to-play players that are brand new, but if you are playing Rayhan 2 and you have a bunch of like battle pets from previous seasons, um, our setup basically only cared about two pets, being Red Umbrella and also the Gunslinger. The third pet was kind of like a optional, like you basically ran whatever your setup needed, whether or not it was like survivability, you could have ran the purple cavalry pet, or if you wanted more damage and survivability, you could run like the ES pet. Um, but the biggest downside of Rayhan 2 was that you could not use the Kitty Express pet. Let me go to it real quick. So the reason why Rayhan 2 could not use this pet is that the line says gain 1 stack of feline stimulant when triggering a main skill. And the issue with Rayhan 2 is that you can't proc your backpack summon unless you manually use your main skill. Um, so this had anti-synergy with the Kitty Express pet, which is basically like the most busted melee pet in the game at the current moment, because you get a ton of damage multipliers and you basically get attack aggression for free at max. So definitely not free to play friendly, but you can eventually max out the pet through the free pet boxes. But basically, the new Afterlight brand thingy, it allows us to trigger our main skill. So we are able to make use of this eventually. And another very interesting addition to the season is the new belt, Pantheon's Elegy. Um, Depending on the prices, of course. This will be better than Eternity, I believe. Um, there are some very interesting roles you can get for this. The biggest one that I'm pretty interested in making work is the God of Machines role. It says persistently triggers core active skill every zero point 0.2 seconds. And if you remember from the previous brand, it includes triggers now with the July 15 patch note update. So basically, my vision of a setup is having this belt trigger the core active skill and having it proc that brand, which also procs another steep strike every zero point 0.2 seconds. Um, and I believe this will open up more viable build paths for melee setups versus being pigeonholed into Rayhan 2 like permanently because the quality of life of the seething spirit that basically attacks for you is it's kind of like impossible to play any other hero after getting used to that quality of life because you're basically using your mobility skill and not caring about stopping to attack packs, which allows you to clear maps like extremely fastly and efficiently. Um, so with this belt, I am looking towards Erica 1 because Thunder Slash got a pretty hefty buff, and I th I personally think Erica 1 is like insane damage scaling with multi-strike. Like personal experience, I transferred my Rayhan 2 gear over to Erica 1. My Rayhan 2 setup this season, if you did follow me, it was kind of difficult to cap damage on SS21, uh, especially without the energy orbs being stacked. But I moved my gear over to Erica 1. I set up my slates and my hero trait to abuse multi-strike, and I basically capped damage while taking off multiple pieces of gear. So the damage scaling of Erica 1 late game is pretty insane if you abuse multi-strike. And also the gearing is like extremely cheap compared to everything else because not many people are like caring about multi-strike on like slates and stuff like that. So like all the slates were 100 FE or cheaper. And the reason why Erica 1 is extremely, I guess, interest it's interesting to me because of this line right here. The skills multi-strikes gain 2% additional damage increment for every 1% steep strike chance. And if you remember back to the branding, let's see, banishment. If you go back to this line, for every 1% steep strike chance above 100%, you have a 1% chance to trigger a core steep strike skill. So my thought process is, why not just stack a bunch of steep strike chance? You get multi-strike additional damage increment multiplier. You get additional chance to proc the banishment. I think this skill will be very, very strong. Um, Obviously it depends on prices, right? But yeah, that is basically my timeline for the Afterlight season. Um, it will either be Cicada Berserking Blade, Rayhan 2 for like Deep Space slash Endgame, or pivot into Erica 1 with the belt plus banishment plus Thunder Slash. Um, I do think it's going to be extremely expensive, the Erica 1 route, so it might not even happen until like way later, like end of week 1 or start of week 2. But I think that'll be a pretty sick setup. It does solve the issue of Erica 1 not having Rayhan 2's backpack, so you can clear packs with just purely spamming your mobility skill, which is one I'm very excited about testing. But I believe that wraps up my thoughts on the patch notes and my plans for season start. Um, there are build code setups for my campaign in Trap 7, I believe. Yeah, but it will be outdated. Unfortunately, this video came out while the game's already in maintenance for next season, but I will be uploading build codes for every step of the way, like after campaign, after Traveler 7, end of day 1, etc. So feel free to follow me there. I also will be streaming the league start, um, and also hopefully the rest of the week as well. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to hop in to my stream, talk in chat, or you can also join my Discord. I'll leave a link in the description. I try to answer most questions. I might be a little busy and preoccupied on league start, just focusing on going through as fast as possible, but yep. I appreciate everyone for who's still watching the video. And I hope you guys enjoy the next season. I will see you there. All right, peace out.